Hi friends, this is take one of my experience with the COVID-19 coronavirus. I wanted to share with you some of the things that I went through, and this was thanks to a request of a friend of mine, Arvind, who a few years back had the swine flu and nearly died from it. And he suggested that I share some of my experiences and what I went through to possibly encourage others to do things that would keep them healthy, and if they already succumb to the virus, some of the things that they can do to return to health faster and perhaps even avoid death itself. And the reason I mention death itself is because I came really close to leaving my body, and in a sense I was quite unaware how close I was to that point. Um, I suspect that I picked up the virus somewhere between Los Angeles airport and Cancun, Mexico, possibly at one of the airports or on one of the planes itself. This was around late February, and when I returned from Mexico, a few days later, I began to have symptoms and realized that I had something, but certainly was in great denial that I even would have picked up the coronavirus. I thought it was either just a flu or a cold, which would leave in a few days and I'd be better and up and running. However, the days came and went, and there I was getting sicker and sicker, and the virus had actually turned into a lung infection and advanced pneumonia. I'd like to talk about those who are susceptible to an illness, who are prone to catching a virus, versus those who are not, and how many elements are included in either remaining healthy and free from a contagion versus those who fall prey, and just how many elements do we need to think about. Primarily, we tend to always focus on the physical. That means you're walking through the airport, somebody with the virus breathes or coughs, and you inhale the virus, and then the whole physical process begins. We don't really talk about, for example, another person could have picked up the virus and it's detected by the immune system and quickly eliminated. And why does that happen to person A and not person B? So I like to also include the what I call the spiritual component. That means if we look at the overall health of the person, what mental state they're in, their emotional state, their psychology, are there different factors that actually make a person very susceptible to hardly susceptible to catching an illness, and that can be any illness or sickness. And when I look at my own components of why I caught the virus, I do notice that I had been quite susceptible to quite a few spiritual factors, whether it be my overall enthusiasm to the coming days, weeks, and months of 2020, a look at my own lifestyle, how much care I'd been taking, looking after myself, doing exercise, meditation, keeping myself in good shape. I think there was a lot of areas that I had become pretty slack and was, in a sense, letting the energy levels run down. And so on some level, I already was quite weak and susceptible to some illness. And obviously, my feeling is because I wasn't in really that strong or good shape, this occurred. Now, you can poo-poo that idea, or you can say, well, obviously, these are unknown factors. However, I would encourage you to ask yourself that question. What shape or condition am I in as of now? And if I'm in a weakened condition, even just being, for example, depressed or anxious, how much effect does that have on the immune system, and therefore making you that much more susceptible? If that's the case and you're willing to recognize that, are you willing to do things to turn that around? For example, to improve your diet, do things like detox, increase the amount of exercise, the let's say breath work, how much you get up and go out into nature, how many hours a day are you sedentary, and really take into account so many factors that either will leave you in a weakened state or keep on adding to the strength of your immune system. Next is what I call soul calling. Let's say you catch the virus and you become sick. What happens? Obviously, you're going to be lying in bed, perhaps with a fever, not feeling well, and you're tired, resting, body can be achy, there can be pains, and so on. During this time, what is happening with you mentally and emotionally? What I noticed in myself is the first thing is much fewer thoughts. I did not have the energy to have the kind of thinking and thoughts that I normally have when I'm in a healthy state. So the quantity of thoughts is much less. The second thing I noticed is, what are my thoughts about? Occasionally I would think, well, what if I die? Then what? But that didn't really come up much, and I somehow had this intuitive feeling that this illness would pass and I would get on with my life and enjoy being healthy once again. What I did notice is I had the choice to direct my thoughts, and it became really clear that in the limited number of thoughts I had, I could really focus on specific items. For example, the people that were around me and supporting me. I could think about my family and people who I'm not in much contact with, who I hadn't spoken to in a long time. And I started to notice that I was becoming more grateful for this condition. It's kind of a paradox of, well, I'm grateful for being sick. However, the being grateful, it was more this opportunity of, I was able to think about really my life, how I'd come to this place, and what sort of support and love people had given me over the years, and the love that I have for myself. And in that, I think I actually went into quite a deep state, or states of relaxation and gratefulness, that I was able to trust this process of being ill and moving back to health. And in some ways, this was really quite a wake-up call for me, that so many of the old patterns, so many of the old ways of thinking did not really serve, didn't have a benefit, and I have the power and choice to look at what kind of thoughts I want, and therefore to make decisions based on those thoughts. For example, a decision of, if somebody confronts me, if somebody says certain things, if I have an expectation of how things should be, to go into a deeper relaxation and say, well, trust, let's see how things work out. Use my intelligence to observe, pay attention, and make perhaps better choices. And as the days went by, I noticed more calmness, more stillness within me. And I really appreciate some of the insights and perhaps even blessings that this illness had brought me. The great lesson of being sick is that of vulnerability. And realizing being in a vulnerable state, what does that actually mean? And being vulnerable is not being weak. Being vulnerable means being able to stay open, have an open heart. And with that comes the future, meaning now that I see my vulnerability and my state, how am I going to behave in the future? How will I treat others? How will I treat myself? Can I remain in this vulnerable state? And what advantages are there? And to me, this is really important stuff, because if I can stay open and vulnerable, it means my fears of my life, the future that's unfolding, those fears will be less. I will trust more. I will be able to treat others with greater love and respect, and really pay more attention, listen to what's going on, as opposed to self-indulgence and the fears of lack, not being supported, all of these different things. And so I really feel that having gone through this, the sickness showed me much more about vulnerability, and for that I'm grateful. For many years, I worked as a health practitioner, advocating methods and reasons for keeping a strong immune system, looking after one's health, and so on. And during the days prior to going to the hospital, I remember lying in bed feeling the notion of going to a hospital just wasn't for me. I felt very, very resistant. And then the day came where my breathing capacity had fallen to probably 50%, and I realized I was getting closer and closer to checking out, so to speak. There came a point where I said, okay, even though I'm delirious and can't think straight, it's time to leave the house and go to hospital. And change is important. You've got to do something, even if you don't really know where it's going to take you, if it will help. But there comes a point where determination and making some kind of change is vitally important, and obviously can save your life. So I was taken to hospital, and I remember the nurse said, "It's quiet, you're the only one who's being admitted." And this was on the 23rd of March. So I was admitted. Next thing, they installed an IV port in my arm, and was put on oxygen, and was being monitored. I wasn't given any other drugs, but simply was being monitored, and my blood was taken for lab analysis. By the second day, my very dear friend Nishi, who is a nurse and was working on the floor that I was in, the room that I was in, she walked into my room and said, "Hello, Sunshine. I have a kit that I've put together for you of essential oils and other supplements, and we're going to start right away." And what she did was placed castor oil and several drops of the essential oils that she had combined together, and rubbed these oils all over my chest. And she said that after a short while, these oils are going to be absorbed and will go to your lungs and kidney and other targeted areas, and will start to help you heal. After about an hour, I soon noticed that my left side, where really the pneumonia was more in my left lung, my left side started to cramp and get very, very painful. And I was at the point where I thought, how am I going to manage this kind of pain? And she came back into the room and massaged the area a little, and just told me to focus on my breathing, keep drinking liquids, remain hydrated, and the pain will pass. Well, it eventually did pass, probably 8 to 12 hours later, but I realized that these oils, these essential oils, and I'll go over a list of those oils with you, definitely had saved my life, and I could feel quite a big shift in what I was going through. I was given a tall glass of freshly squeezed green juice, and as soon as I started drinking the juice, I could immediately feel a life surge or life force going into me. After having eaten hospital food for a few days, this comparison of live, fresh green juice for me was in effect a revelation. And I cannot stress the importance of live, fresh, raw foods enough. So especially when you're having an illness and recovering, I really do encourage that you have as many fresh foods and juices, organic foods as possible. The next few days in the hospital was mainly spent resting and sleeping, a little bit of eating. Quite often my blood was drawn for lab analysis. And interestingly, quite a few of the nurses had a lot of trouble getting the needle into the vein. And yet when my friend came along and looked for a vein, she managed very easily and quickly to find a vein. So I asked her, do the other nurses have so much problems finding a vein? And she said a very interesting thing, that first of all, you have to approach the patient with love. You have to come from a caring and being present place, because if you're not in that space, then somehow the vein rolls away, you can't find it, the blood doesn't come out. And I would like to emphasize that you have no idea how many times I was poked with needles. In one case, the nurse actually ruptured the vein and my wrist swelled up with blood. That was no fun at all. So my last day at the hospital, the doctor came in and said, "I'm happy with the count of your lymphocytes. They've increased to the level of satisfaction, and we'll be able to release you and let you go home later this afternoon." So certainly that was good news, that I was on the up and up. And later in the evening, my son took me back home. Several similarities being back at home. That was certainly nice to have my comforts. But it was kind of the same routine for the next week, where I was pretty tired, had very low energy levels, and mainly stayed in my bed and slept or rested. Certainly as the days passed, I continued to do the oils, was lucky to have really good food brought to me, and slowly but surely I began to recover, and in these last couple of days have felt really an increase in my energy levels and ability to even move around the house and do a few chores. And it's quite something that even just making a cup of tea brings great satisfaction. Something small like that, where before I never even had the energy to make a cup of tea. The similarities between having an illness and what's going on in the world today, there's quite a few. The first is, how do we adapt to change? And one of the important aspects about change is to somehow surrender to what's happening, to keep present, and to go into this process of change in what I call a loving and gentle way. So if you're sick, what do you do? How do you adapt to this change? Perhaps a lot of emotions may come up, memories may come up. The way that you behaved in the past suddenly becomes instrumental in understanding that this illness may be giving you lots of messages in how you can change your life, because you know that you're not dying, you're going through a process, and this process is of healing. And when you come out of it, how are you going to live your life? And I've spoken before as to the importance of not only being gentle with yourself and simply understanding that this may take days, weeks, sometimes months, depending on your condition. And what do you have? Well, you have the ability to surrender, to be gentle with yourself, to be kind, and to be kind not only with yourself, but to others who are supporting and helping you. And I think that this is probably one of the most important lessons when you're sick, is to now change many of the attitudes and conditioning approaches that you may have carried for a long time, and to let that go and to see if when you do recover, you can become a much more present and what I like to think of as gentle person. So perhaps these are a few lessons that you can take with you. Next, I'd like to go over an array of foods and supplements that I've been using, which certainly has helped me back onto the road of recovery. So I've made a few lists, and I'll show you some examples on my kitchen table, and let's go through it. At the top of the list, I have written organic vital foods, and in parenthesis, green juices. Let's go back to Hippocrates, who made the statement, "Let food be thy medicine, and let medicine be thy food." And this is vital, so important to getting better soon and staying healthy. So let's look at a few foods that I put together. This is in the range or spectrum of what I call prebiotics, probiotics, enzymes, and nutrients. To start off with, we have over here fermented garlic, sprouted beans, apple cider vinegar, some fresh raw salad ingredients, including cabbage, beans, carrots. Over here is a bottle of kimchi, and here is the fermented lotus root. Now, this is an example of some of the foods that I include in my main meal, which is essentially organic in nature. Next, I go to the essential oils. And here is a bottle. This little bottle over here, almost finished, is a combination of some of these essential oils, including oregano, cinnamon, thieves, cypress, camphor, lavender, frankincense, myrrh, black pepper, and nutmeg. And I believe that it was these essential oils that pretty much saved my life. The next topic I'll go on to talk about is ozone therapy. Now, intravenous ozone is illegal in this country, and it is possible to also do ozone rectally, or you can have it generated. I've seen people release bottles inside one of these box infrared saunas, and you breathe in the ozone. The next one is Rife technology, and this will generate frequencies that can actually break up viruses and help to destroy bacteria. The next item I will show you is turpentine. Turpentine dates back to the ancient Greeks and has been used as a very broad spectrum medicine for many, probably thousands of years. Next, I'll mention MMS and DMSO. MMS is known as sodium chlorite, and DMSO is dimethyl sulfoxide. DMS has also far-reaching health benefits, being anti-inflammatory to being used as an adjunct in cancer therapy. So definitely well worth researching these two. A few other things I've been using in the realm of vitamins. People have been using vitamin C powder, and this has been done intravenously here in New York with great benefit and effect on the virus. Here's another vitamin C, including rose hips. You can include vitamin D3, B12, D3 with K2. This is neem, which also has many medicinal properties. And then one of my favorite is probiotics. This one has 30 billion probiotics, and it's really quite amazing for the intestines. The next one I'll show you here, this one is CBD oil, which has been nano-sized down to about 9 nanos and can be really quite remarkable at supporting the immune system function. The next one is, well, just to continue with the vitamin C, vitamin B17, also known as amygdalin, has been used as an adjunct also in cancer therapies, but apparently has far-ranging benefits for things like viruses and bacteria. The next one I'll mention is oxygen, and I needed oxygen while I was in the hospital, and a nebulizer can be of great help. And moving on to Western or modern so-called medicines or drugs, we have the use of antibiotics, steroids, painkillers, vaccines, and antivirals. Interestingly, while I was in the hospital, I was offered flu shots pretty much every day, and also to start a course of antibiotics. Obviously, both of those I never went for. I felt that my immune system was okay, and certainly the essential oils, as far as I'm concerned, saved my life. A few other things to take into account would be breathing exercises, meditation, massage. Massage, I feel, is very important, especially when it comes to moving the lymph and clearing out toxins. And the other way of also helping clearing out toxins would be hot baths, Epsom salt baths, sauna, and steam sauna, or just doing a pot of steam with a cloth over your face. I feel, as I've spoken about earlier, these things of gratitude, being in a place of appreciation, and staying open are important, because you do not know where the illness will take you, and how feelings of gratitude and change of emotions can actually significantly help the immune system. Lastly, I have here the UV sterilization lamp. Here is a photo of a UV sterilization lamp that helps to sterilize the room of bacteria and viruses. And lastly, I would recommend some research on the benefits of colloidal silver, in the same way how they help to kill viruses and bacteria. Thanks for watching my rough cut video. Feel free to contact me at any time. And this video was completed by Final Cut Amateur.